Hey gang, Jack Allaire here, and whenever I go to a thrift store, one of the things I'm always looking for is something I've never seen before. The time in the internet that I grew up was the time of true exploration, where weird things were just coming out all the time, and we were trying to fix the analog to digital divide. Because while there was stuff set up for analog and there was stuff kind of set up for digital, that transition went really wonky back and forth. So a bunch of things were made that really didn't make any sense then and really don't make sense now. The thing that I saw this time is the iPad Camera Connection Kit. And the fascinating thing about this is that it is useful for two things: the iPad original and the iPad second generation. So the iPad 1 and the iPad 2, that's it. Every other iPad, this says it won't work with. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not so sure. But I just happen to have an iPad 2 at home, so I brought it home to test it out. Just to see what all it could do in a combination between this and this. The iPad that we're going to be using today is my old iPad 2, which is a 64 gigabyte model and has been rock solid even all these years later. It is mainly relegated to watching TVs and movies from the network. The iPad Connection Kit comes with two different devices. One adapter is for SD cards, and the other one is a USB adapter that works with some devices. The SD card we're going to use in this demonstration today is from the Coolpix L20 that I picked up not too long ago. One of the more frustrating things of trying to use these two adapters is that they don't sit flush with the iPad. So I ended up, a lot of times when I wanted to plug these adapters in, picking the iPad up, plugging them in, and then setting them gently back down onto the table. Once the iPad does read the adapter and the SD card though, everything works flawless from there. It opens up photos, asks you which ones you want to import, and it's that easy. And now the photos, both clear and blurry, of my cat are on the iPad. Moving on to the USB adapter. The diagram on the side of the box shows using a USB cable to connect the camera to the iPad. However, since I got the Nikon Coolpix secondhand, and it uses a proprietary USB cable, I don't have one of those yet, so I can't connect it to it. Thus, I just decided to connect some random things to it and see what happens. I decided to start with just a simple power test, since the Nintendo 3DS doesn't draw that much power, it has a very simple USB connection, and it should more or less be able to charge. And there we are, little charging light. So we know that the connector can output power enough to charge a 3DS. This is my Garmin Forerunner. It is a watch that I did a band replacement on not too long ago, and it will also charge. Also, another low-powered device, which makes a lot of sense. I use a Pixel 6 Pro, and the error that I got is Pixel 6 Pro, the connected device requires too much power. The weird thing is that it still charged the phone. It just wouldn't transfer the pictures from it. And I couldn't figure out how to get that to work. I did later on test my wife's iPhone, and that worked flawlessly. The one she uses is an iPhone 12 mini. Since my phone wouldn't work and my wife's phone would, I decided to test out some of the other esoteric items I have lying around that can, in fact, take photos. The next one I moved on to was the PlayStation Vita. The odd thing is that I got the same power warning as before, and the Vita wanted to try and connect, but it just looks like these two things can't talk to each other. I decided on a whim just to try a normal webcam to see if it would do anything. But of course I got the same thing as with the other devices, that the connected device requires too much power. Now, I figured that this would not work because if everything that was just electronic didn't work, there's no way that this floppy drive was going to work, because I know that mechanical parts draw a lot more power normally. Lo and behold, it told me that it required too much power. But the interesting thing is, all of the devices were identified. So that means that the iPad knew what it was looking at each and every time, which I thought was pretty cool. Now, just kind of grasping at straws, I decided why not try and power an old Raspberry Pi that I had just laying around. This is a Raspberry Pi 2B, if I remember correctly. And we got the same thing. The attached accessory uses too much power. But for a moment, that light blinked, which made me think that it might not be that it actually takes too much power, just that the iPad is programmed to say no. Then, just for giggles, I grabbed my Wacom tablet, and it identified it, but once again, it just takes too much power, which I found really silly, because I used to remember that mouses would work from this kind of connector. I also ended up trying a full-size keyboard, and that didn't work either. Once again, required too much power. Then I tried a whole host of USB drives, going from all the way back to, I believe the first one is 256 megabytes. It's a Data Traveler 2.0. It's a very small USB drive that has just survived the ravages of time, and none of these worked. I did suddenly remember that I was wearing my Samsung fitness tracker, and it's basically another low-powered watch, so I decided to see if it would charge. And lo and behold, it does. I've recently been playing with the Stadia controller and decided to see if it would work just by chance. I figured that it being a fairly robust controller, I was going to get the same error. I wanted to try, but it says that it requires too much power. It does identify it, though, as the Stadia controller. The last thing I decided to try was a USB hub that also has a network adapter on it. And I was fairly certain that this would not work, but because it had a USB hub, I didn't know if it would possibly think that's okay, but it didn't even get mostly plugged in before that error popped up. And there you have it, a quick look at the iPad Camera Connection Kit. I had a lot of fun looking at this weird little device, or devices, I guess, and it was interesting to see exactly how each device reacted. But it is really nice to know that, for the most part, anything USB plugged in got recognized. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, play on!